Hello and welcome to Sunday Sweet Chats. My name is Charles K. Carter and I'm a queer poet who currently lives in Oregon. I'm the author of Read My Lips from David Robert Books, as well as several chapbooks, including Artificial Sweetness, which just came out from Finishing Line Press. But that's enough about me. Let's talk about our sweet guest today and discuss some sweet, sweet poetry. Hello, Jamie. Can you introduce yourself to our audience?
Hi, Charles. Hi, everybody. My name is Jamie Kitts. I am a transgender woman and a lesbian and a queer poet from Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. I am also the co-managing editor of Qwerty Magazine, which we run here in Fredericton out of the University of New Brunswick. There is another journal called The Fiddlehead. They're a lot bigger than us. We're just a small student-run publication, but I'd like to think that we take in a lot of really excellent poetry. And I'm always so moved by all of the work that we accept. And if I'm remembering right, we just accepted you for the last issue we put out. Your poem, Charles, we were all immediately just like, yes, this one, this is great. It was so clever and refreshing from everything else that we had read that term.
And if I can interject just to like kind of give a little poetly advice, I'm making up words here. As poets, we do that. That's a poem that I kind of threw in there. Like, I'm like, I don't even know. Like, so it was a weird poem for me to have accepted. And I've learned I have to do that sometimes, just throw a weird one in there because I think as poets, sometimes we don't even know what's gonna click.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like I most of my success from my own publications comes from writing poems that are not like poems. Like I don't read or write my poems in traditional poet voice, if that makes sense, which is not to say that it's like that I don't at all or that I think that poetry is bad, but I find I get the most joy out of writing and the most success out of my publications when I'm not trying to sound like a poet and I'm just trying to sound like me, or I'm just trying to sound different.
All right. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted.
No, no, not at all. That was the intro.
All right, awesome.
That's me.
Before we get too far into the poetry and literary world, since it's Sunday Sweet Chats, what is a sweet treat that satisfies your sugary urges when you have them?
Okay, so being on hormone replacement therapy, I have a constant craving for sugar. Chocolate has never tasted as good as it does right now, but that is not my favorite sweet treat. My favorite sweet treat is something that you can't buy anymore. Here in Canada, I don't know if they had this stateside, but we had a limited edition Coca-Cola bottle called Starlight Cola. It was, it is the absolute best drink I've ever had. Alcoholic, sugar, juice, water, whatever. Best liquid I have ever ingested is the Starlight Coca-Cola. They don't make it anymore, and I'm gonna say that's homophobic because that cola tastes like how kissing girls feels.
I
There is
love that.
there is one that is close second. It's not as good, and it's on its way out, but it's still pretty good. There's a Transformation Cola that's out now that I guess is a crossover with some music artist I've never listened to. Sorry if that's your Coke. It's good, but I've never heard your music. Um, but it's the bottle is white and pink, and it's called Transformation flavor. It has trans femme vibes. It's the most like transgender cola I have ever seen, the most transgender looking food I've ever seen, and like in a way that's like subtle and not trying to like hit you over the head with like, yes, it's white, pink, and blue because it's Pride Month. Um, it it genuinely does taste like gender euphoria though. So to friends I call it the gender coke. If someone's asking me like, "Hey, I'm going to the gas station or the corner store, do you want anything?" I'm like, "Get me the gender coke, please. Thank you."
I love that. Queer Coca-Cola.
It's delicious.
All right. You have a poem to read for us. Go
I
for it.
do, yes. This poem is called You Are, You Are, You Are. This will be coming out soon in a chapbook that I am co-writing with my workshop group. And I'm publishing it through Qwerty Magazine as well. I have decided to take on the initiative of starting a little chapbook series with Qwerty, something we can do over the summer. We are currently open to submissions from Canadian poets who are unpublished in chapbook form or full collection form. And you can find more information about that through Qwerty Magazine's social media channels. This poem is, like I said, coming out in our chapbook. We are called the Egg Poets, and our chapbook is called All Things to Keep You Here. And here we go. You are. You're not a fetish. You're the pumpkin chai tea open handmade Pikachu mittens holding prayer that someone might love their aesthetic. You're not a monster. You're the 16-ounce Zero Ultra crushed at 2,045 meters in triumph and memory to those who perished on the climb. You're not a fad. You're the notice once nailed on the church door, now strung to the sailing shale of the unheard gate, rushing, glass smashing, party crashing, dear motherfucking life! Hope Zoom didn't bleep any of that or cut out the or filter the noise or anything.
You are great, but my dog is starting to bark in the background.
Oh no, I'm so sorry.
I don't know if it's you or I heard something outside, so I think
I'm just gonna
we
say
might have it might be you. Your passion just exudes. That was great. It was really fun, really passionate, really exciting. And
Thank you.
I love that it's in second person. Like, I think there's kind of a stigma, especially like in academia, like, don't write poetry in second person or don't write in second person. And fuck that.
It's funny.
Like, there's some
You're
great
so
stuff
right.
in that.
Yeah, you're so right. And I actually I did my undergraduate BA in English with a concentration in creative writing at St. Thomas University, which has a stereotype of being the weed smoking university in New Brunswick. And I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I can tell you my professors were pretty fucking cool with undergraduate writers taking on weird projects. So for my final project in my senior project in creative writing class, I wrote an R-rated grindhouse horror choose your own adventure book in second person. Was it good? No. But I cut my teeth on writing second person perspective work because I actually find it really, really alarming. Like, there is nothing that grabs you by the heart faster than being told you by a book. I find it so sinister and yet so fun. I grew up reading like those what were they called? Fighting fantasy books. They had these characteristic green spines. They were game books, so like single player role playing games that were choose your own adventure books too. So I tried to write one of those.
I love it. That sounds exciting. Like, fun, like hybrid out there, fun stuff. And yeah, like, I think there are a lot of rules to different types of poetry, but I think like being such a stickler for them is so counterintuitive to creativity. Like,
Yeah,
generally I tend to write certain ways or follow certain forms, but I usually like create something different or unique or like think something different about the world or myself when I get out of that and tap into a different form or different style or saying, I'm not going to follow this rule today. And
yeah,
break the rules. Don't follow the rules all the time. Sometimes they can help to get you somewhere different, but don't feel you have to stick to them all the time.
exactly. I was actually just doing some peer tutoring for I'm doing my master's in literature now at UNB, which is why I have the opportunity to work with Qwerty. But I also do peer mentoring. I love connecting with undergraduate writers or first-time writers and helping them to more fully realize their work in a way that takes them from like these initial little starting points and giving them little pieces of advice to help them grow. Um, One of the last conversations I had to that effect was with a student who didn't want to learn the rules. He just kind of wanted to figure them out on his own. And on one hand, I felt like maybe I should tell this guy the rules are there for a reason. Like, they're very helpful starting points, and this is a great way to figure out if what you're doing has already been done before. On the other hand, I was like, fuck yeah, man. Like, explore this as if no one else ever has. Take this for everything that it is and throw it away and make your own thing out of it. I'm so here for that. And in my heart, I was like, you should tell him to read something, but I couldn't not just be excited for him.
Yeah, I think there's everything in poetry is a balance. Like form can be so wonderful, it's so inspiring, or so like choosing a different form to get yourself out of your box. But at times it can be so restricting too. I mean, everything is a balance. I know traditionally right now, rhyme or there's a trend right now that rhyme is so bad and like we should turn away from rhyme. But like there's moments where that can like be such a pressure point and so great. Everything's a balance. And
Yeah,
some things are so different for each poem. Like each poem speaks for itself. One poem, like rhyme is gonna hit really well, and sometimes it's like that's pulling something away from it. So it's all a balance and everything is different, and it's hard to figure out that balance.
yeah. To your point about rhyming, I just started reading Luke Hathaway's The Affirmations, which is this incredible moving work of transmasculine poetry, but it's written very traditionally. Like, there is a lengthy piece in tribute to W.H. Auden's New Year's letter. This is a letter from and it's now a letter from Luke Hathaway to a friend of his who is a big fan of Auden's work, and it's it's written in iambic pentameter with a rhyme scheme, and it's so refreshing. It's so weird to say that because, like, I'm used to reading free verse poetry. I'm used to accepting work from first time writers or people who are exploring different ideas and who need a place to potentially see that work flourish. So to read something new written so delicately and written so, what's the word I'm looking for? That's the problem with being a poet, is like there's always like
What's
the
the right
perfect word
word?
and it's somewhere over there. And sometimes it's not even like a particularly expensive word. It's just the one that you don't have in front of you.
And sometimes we make up
Sophisticated.
words.
Yeah, and sometimes we could just make up words. It's a very sophisticated and moving poem in an incredible work. Luke Hathaway's writing is amazing, and it's so it's masterful. It's nothing short of masterful. I don't know if this collection has received acclaim. It deserves the world.
For time's sake, we're going to transition into my last question. We still have a few minutes yet, but in this world that is so chaotic and there are so many salty powers that be, what is it that helps keep you sweet?
So, speaking of the chaotic world, like I said, I'm based out of Fredericton, New Brunswick. If any of your listeners might be familiar with the province of New Brunswick, they might have heard very recently about our premier, Blaine Higgs. Blaine Higgs has introduced a rollback of rights for trans children in our school system, and very naturally, we're all pissed off about it. Um, I uh, I tutor neurodivergent children for my day job. Some of them happen to be queer students. Love working with them. So when we were protesting, I decided to tell some of the stories that my students have told me, being queer students in New Brunswick school systems, and also read some protest poetry. So we're currently fighting him, and it looks like we're winning, but the war is not over, and we're all very on edge. Just today, he decided to take to Twitter, and he said even more transphobic shit. And in the middle of the legislature, while they were sitting, read a horrifying, horrifying speech that goes way farther than just rolling back protections for children. It's very clear this man wants us dead. We're terrified. How do I stay sweet in the middle of this? I just had a sleepover with two very, very good friends of mine. I love them dearly, and these are both two trans folks who I've gotten the pleasure to know through the beginnings of their transitions. And I would not be nearly as stable right now without their love and support. They're two of my favorite people, and I think it all always has to come back to community. There's nothing else that we can really do except fight and find our people. And once we found our people, oh, you live for it.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's such a vulnerable thing to share, and it's so, I know we were kind of talking about this before we hit record, like I see a lot of that's happening in the US as well, particularly with the trans community.
Oh yes.
And
Oh
like,
yes.
and I've worked with trans high school age students, and I think so much of it is dehumanizing, and people need to hear stories, people need to hear you talk, people need to hear other queer people talk, people need to have access to books. I know in the US we're seeing a lot of book banning. We need to see access to books, because I know, like, growing up as a gay kid in a rural area in the US, like, those books saved my life. Being able to see, like, there are other people like me. I'm not a monster that the politicians are saying I am. Like, I'm a human. This is just part of who I am, and like, I don't, like, it's so important. Thank you for speaking up, for doing that hard work. And I love how you said protest. I did my previous chapbook before Artificial Sweetness was called Salem Revisited, and it was all about homophobia and transphobia in the US from the beginning colonial days to today, unfortunately. And that was kind of a hashtag I did along with that, is like poetry's protest. Like,
poetry is protest. We had a whole other thing 3 years ago about that. We don't need to get into that, but a good friend of mine was involved very, very much in a poetry is protest debacle.
thank you so much for being here. We're about to time out, so I do have to cut you off. Thanks for being here, Jamie. It's been a sweet treat to have you. Thanks for everyone who's listening. We'll have Jamie's socials in the chat, or in the video description, so you can follow. Thanks for tuning into Sunday Sweet Chats. We'll catch you for another episode next Sunday. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Charles. Bye, everybody.